That's fine. Okay, but you guys hear me talking, right? You guys can hear me. And give me a hello in the chat window if you can hear me. All right. So today, what I wanted to cover was one really important thing to me, which is the trying to understand the audience. So I have always kind of made assumptions about who and what I thought the audience was. And then I kind of, over the last few years, maybe 2, 3 years, started to realize like it's not what I thought it was. So here's what I thought it was. Originally, I thought my audience was the kind of the aspiring technician type people, because that was sort of, and also DIYers. So like maybe you're a small business owner and you don't have an IT person, or you can't afford to outsource your IT, so you just want to know how to do things yourself. And then the other side of it was I thought that a lot of the audience was people that were junior technicians, or maybe wannabe technicians. And so I kind of crafted a lot of my content with that in mind. But more recently, I began to wonder, is it maybe that you're gamers, uh, or even in some cases like really experienced people, which I'm just going to be humble here, is that I didn't think that anybody who was that IT experience, like say somebody who's been in the field for more than 2, 3 years, would have any interest in coming to check out the content that I made, because a lot of it's pretty basic, right? How to terminate an RJ45, how to tell the difference between a switch and a router. I don't know how to connect a console cable. Um, I don't know. Maybe you're just curious. Maybe you just want to see how other people are doing it, right? So, and by the way, any of you guys that are just joining that were over at the other live stream, I apologize. I didn't. I thought if I scheduled it in YouTube, that when I went to go start it in Zoom, it would automatically connect, but apparently I don't think it did. I think it just made a brand new stream. So I'll see if I can get that figured out before next week. This is kind of new to me. I'm not a big streamer. So, but anyways, so I'm thinking like, okay, well, why would a gamer want to be in my audience? And I'm not saying that you all are gamers. I'm just saying I'm thinking, based on some of the comments I've seen, some of the demographics that I've seen, that it's because, so I'm not a gamer, but I have a feeling that one of the things that the gamers fight against is latency. I'd heard that from a colleague of mine who does a lot of gaming, that one of the big things that at home gamers struggle with is network latency. So I'm thinking that a lot of people are coming to find out, first of all, how to make a hardwired connection to get rid of any potential, Wi-Fi lag or buffer bloat. And then the other one would be just general knowledge about how can I optimize my network, make it go faster. Anyway, so I'm gonna try to keep that in mind. But if you're somebody who's watching this video outside of this live stream, because after I finish the live stream, I turn it into just a regular old video. It's in my library, and I've noticed that over 100 something people watched like last week's, even though there was only like 6 or 7 people in the audience at the time I did it. There was a lot of people that came and watched it later. But anyway, if you're watching it later, or even if you're watching it now, if you want to let me know, if you're a gamer, or whoever you are, I just want to know who you guys are, because it will help me craft my content. Like I said, originally I just thought everybody was either a junior IT person or a home small office, small business do-it-yourselfer. But if I find out that more of you are gamers, I'll try to find out more what I can do for that. So because I love sharing the knowledge. And a lot of these things that I do, they're kind of like basic stuff. But just because something's basic to you, it might be rocket science to somebody else. I know that's true for me. What it say, for instance, I don't know, a topic like, oh, I don't know, let's pick something out there like taxes, maybe, like the difference between a C corp and what's the other one, LLC or LLP, or. I mean, actually, I do know a little bit about that. But my point is that stuff for somebody who works with that stuff all day might be so elementary, but to me, it's like, I don't know. I don't know which one. Anyway, so I think I kind of beat that topic to death. So So I'm looking over the comments here, and Tariq is chiming in. Thank you for that. Actually, I never really thought about that, but I guess somebody could be both an IT person and a gamer at the same time. I miss the gamer thing. So here's what happened to me. Just give you a little getting to know the network advisor kind of piece of trivia. And this will basically tell you how old I am. When I was in high school, the cutting edge technology for games were basically Atari, like the Atari console. Like we're talking Space Invaders, Pac-Man, uh was it maybe what else was it like Tank, I think, or something like that. And then there was Commodore 64. So what happened was after I left home, I went into the service and I didn't have any access to things like game consoles or television. I did watch a lot of television for that 4 years I was in the service. So I missed the whole revolution of like Nintendo. I just missed it. And so when I got out of the service, I didn't have any interest to get back into it. So that kind of purged the game thing out of my life was, once I went in the service and, I got out there. I mean, Atari was still around, but it was ancient at that time. So I never picked up the gaming bug. I just never got into me. But I understand that it's a big, big, big industry. My children are certainly into it. I have to kind of actively work as a parent to separate them from their game time, so I can see how addicting it is. It's kind of funny though now that the new thing is Roblox. Everything is Roblox. I mean, I don't know about in your world, but Roblox is huge with the youngsters right now. Well, anyway, that kind of leads me to my next topic that I wanted to talk about today, which was Wi-Fi. So, for me, I watched Wi-Fi grow because it basically showed up in the earlier part of my IT career. The Wi-Fi when it started was like a cute little nice to have, but anybody who was seriously into gaming, well, not sorry, not into gaming, but just into hardcore processor network intensive type things, were not uh, going to entertain Wi-Fi because it didn't make any sense because it's too slow. It was, somebody turns on the microwave or somebody takes a phone call on a cordless phone, and all of a sudden, the connectivity goes way down or even gets broken. So back during the Wi-Fi 1 days, which was we had 802.11b and then we had 802.11g, I think was the faster one. Ooh, 54 megabytes. So what happened was that Wi-Fi was kind of seen as this sort of like nice to have kind of thing, but not a hardcore real medium for anybody who really wanted to get some serious business applications done. Well, so fast forward, we had Wi-Fi 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. It got a little better because it was faster. But then Wi-Fi 6, and this is the reason I'm bringing this up, because Wi-Fi 6 was a major game changer. It was a major game changer because if those of you out there are old enough to remember the old hub switches, I probably have one around. I could have brought it, but those, it looks just like a switch, but it was a hub. And the biggest way I can make an analogy between a hub and a switch is a hub is kind of like a bunch of people in an open room all trying to talk to each other, but the rule is that everyone has to shut up while one person talks. So say you got 12 people in a room, they all want to talk to each other, but only one person can talk at a time. So one person talks, everyone else has to shut up. It's almost like a conference call a little bit, right? We've all been in conference calls where you're trying to get the timing right so you can butt into the conference call so you could be heard. Well, anyway, so that's what a hub was like. And those were pretty much the predominant muxes of network connectivity up until, I don't know what, 90, 95, 96, something like that. And then they came out with switches. Now, switches, imagine that you put all those 12 people back in a room, but you gave every single one of those person their own individual little telephone that they could call anybody else in the room and they could all talk at the same time. That's a good, maybe I don't know if it's good, it's my analogy of the difference between a switch and a hub. Is a hub is like everybody's in the room, they're all trying to talk to each other, but only one person can talk at a time. And if two people talk out of turn, they all have to shut up and wait to try again. Whereas with a switch, it's like they're all in that room, but they've all got telephones. They can all talk to each other independently all at the same time. Well, the reason I bothered to tell you that story is that everything in Wi-Fi up to Wi-Fi 5, or yeah, including Wi-Fi 5, which was 802.11ac, was basically the hub style. Is that everyone had to take a turn? I mean, I may be oversimplifying it, but basically it was hub style. When we went to Wi-Fi 6, we went to switch style. All right. And that's extremely significant because now that means that a Wi-Fi access point with only one or maybe two radios in it can have several conversations with endpoints all at the same time, dramatically increasing the throughput. Now, since then, we've had Wi-Fi 6E, which what that did was increase the available bandwidth that it could use. And then of course now I understand we're kind of in the beginnings of hammering out the standards for Wi-Fi 7, which will be basically a lot faster. Now there's to understand a little bit what's going on there. When I said bandwidth, so there's frequencies and there's bandwidth. So frequencies are like the individual channel, like that's not the channel, but it's frequency. Like you have 60 hertz and 120 hertz and kilohertz and so forth, like a radio frequency, like on your dial, right? Well, so in Wi-Fi, it's 2.4 and it's 5, but now Wi-Fi 6E is also including 6. So these are the different frequencies that you can use. Well, moreover, there's these things called bandwidth, and bandwidth is how wide a section of that frequency do you use. Now, the smaller the bandwidth, the more likely it is that you can have a very reliable connection, but you can't move as much data because think of the pipe is thinner. But as you expand, so say you go from 40 to 80 or even 160, you get this very wide band. So think of it like lanes on a freeway. You got now all of a sudden you went from 2 lanes to 4 lanes and 8 lanes. So you've got way more larger pipe or lanes to move traffic. However, those bandwidths though become a lot more delicate. They don't penetrate infrastructure as well. So things like walls and doors and bricks. So that's the trade-off. Is if you have smaller bandwidth, you have better penetration, a more reliable connection. As you move up to larger bandwidths, you can move more data at once, but you need to be a lot closer to the endpoint. The good news is you're not limited to one. You're not stuck on just one bandwidth because these machines will dynamically move up and down. So you may be allocated for 160 what is it, gig, meg, whatever. They go like 40, 80, 160, I think. They might even be higher than that. So, but it just dynamically shifts up and down. It's almost kind of like with the way networks negotiate connections. Check, can you do 1 gig? Oh, you can't? Okay. Can you do 100 gig? Okay, all right, fine, we'll do 100 gig or 100 meg. So that's what's interesting about Wi-Fi 6. And the reason I'm going down this road is to begin to talk about what it means to our industry. So when I got started in the industry back in the early 90s, everything was about the freaking cable. Can you tell how much I like pulling cable? I still do it. Believe it or not, I still pull cable. Anyway, so I mean, I pulled miles of cable. I mean, literally, I have pulled miles of cable, maybe even over 100 miles of cable, maybe even hundreds of miles of cable. And so everything was a cable. Every time you had to have an endpoint, it meant there was a cable, whether it was a voice endpoint, which might have been just a Cat3 voice cable, or whether it was a PC, like a computer endpoint, Ethernet endpoint, which would have been a Cat5 or later was a Cat5e. Well, the problem we're getting into is a little bit similar to what those of us who are older enough to remember the old 386, 486, 586 days, where every few years, what you have is not good enough anymore. Now, amazingly, Cat5e had an extremely long run. But now Cat6 is pretty much the standard. 5e, sometimes you still see it being called for, like in the independent contracting that I do, sometimes they still have tickets that say you can run a 5e because it's just, the speed's not that important. But 6 is the new thing. Well, I don't know if you guys have noticed, But now I'm seeing affordable switches and network interfaces um, that are the 2.5 gig or 5 gig or even I think I saw a 40 gig connector. Isn't that insane? 40 gig. Um, Now these are copper. This is not fiber. These are copper network interfaces. And so now Cat 6 doesn't cut it. So imagine, and this is actually kind of based on a true story. Imagine that you are an IT director for a large organization, and 3 years ago, you just spent a gigantic amount of money to have the entire organization upgraded from Cat 5 or 5E up to 6. And now you've got the business department coming to you with requirements for 10 gig. Because, like, for instance, like a lot of Macs now, if you go to buy like a Mac, not the MacBook, but what's the one that's the brick, like a Studio, they come with like 10 gig NICs. So that's great. But if you're going to run it on a Cat 6 cable, if it's short enough, you might get away with it. But for the most part, it's not supported, right? So now you imagine that you're that IT director and you just spent all this money convincing your business stakeholders to drop all that money to upgrade from Cat 5e to 6, maybe 3 years ago. And now you're got a dilemma. So do we go to Cat 6a, which will support that? Or do we go to fiber? So this is some of the things these guys are up against. So the reason I bothered to bring up the Wi-Fi is because this IT director for this large college in DC that I was talking to about something unrelated, but he was relaying this to me, is that he's considering, and I'm sure others are, whether investing the money in Wi-Fi would be a smarter approach, because even if you have to turn around and upgrade antennas, and even if you have to turn around and upgrade the cable that connects the antenna, meaning the access point, at least you're only replacing the cable from the switch to the access point and not a cable to every single cubicle or classroom or dormitory room that requires a cable upgrade. So you're talking about really large amounts of money, and it's causing these IT decision makers now to look at the Wi-Fi 6 and the Wi-Fi 7 as viable options to the to hard cabling. You could even go fiber if you want, but that comes with all kinds. I mean, fiber is expensive. It's not easy to work with in the field. It's tricky to splice in the field. It's delicate. It requires expensive network adapters. Whereas Wi-Fi, I mean, granted, you do have to upgrade the individual machines. Wi-Fi receive. The Wi-Fi antenna in the machine. But it's a much easier and certainly more scalable approach to remedy this dilemma of the trap of trying to get caught up on the cable speeds, every 5 years. Like I said, back in the 5 and 5E days, those things had a long run. People were using 100 megabit adapters for a long time. And then 1 gig showed up. Gosh, I don't know, when was that? 15 years ago. And then 1 gig was, I mean, even today, 1 gig is still pretty standard. But now we're starting to see 2, 5, 10, and probably, maybe in a few years, a 40 gig adapter is going to be affordable. But, you're going to be limited to what the switch and the cable can handle. So I just kind of point that out, that if you hadn't thought about that, it might be worth thinking about and spending maybe more time paying attention to IT. I'm sorry, paying more attention to Wi-Fi and where it's going in the industry. But I think we'll kind of move off of that. And then we'll move into now the other one I would talk about is 5G. Now, the 5G just kind of puts a complicated spin on everything I just said. So 5G is kind of like, in my mind, from whatever. Now, I'm not a Wi-Fi expert. I'm not a 5G expert. I'm just kind of sharing what I know, combined with what I hear, combined with what I hear from my day job. And that is that 5G has this extremely low latency, which makes it really great for automation. It makes it great for Internet of Things. It makes it great for robotics, and it makes it great for remote control. So much so, and I guess it does it better than Wi-Fi, but so much so, Wi-Fi 5G, because it is so low in latency, that apparently surgeons can actually remotely operate from however many miles apart. So maybe you've got a renowned brain surgeon in Seattle. With the right 5G and the right network, they can manipulate a robotic set of surgical instruments somewhere, maybe, in Houston or something like that, so that they're actually performing the surgery, from 2,000 miles away, because 5G allows that. So then this just complicates everything. A minute ago I was saying, hey, we're just going to go to Wi-Fi 6 and 7, and then we won't have to worry about cable anymore, and everything's going to be great, and sunshines and smiles. Well, now we got to look at 5G and decide how that's going to work. And, is 5G going to try to nudge its way into the Wi-Fi space? Do they live harmoniously? I will tell you in my own personal experience, one thing I've noticed that 5G has done that has really cemented in my mind where there's a place for everything at the right time. Is it so? For instance, I have like a T-Mobile phone. It's a Samsung Galaxy 20. It has 5G, and it's on T-Mobile. If I'm out in my front yard, it screams, it flies. But if I just so much as come in my front door and walk into the center of my house, it just, I mean, it's just really, in fact, a lot of times when I come into the house, I'll pick up my iPhone, which is on 4G, because it's actually faster. Now, I don't have to use 5G and 4G in the house because I've got Wi-Fi. So that makes me realize that there's a place for each, and we have to decide what makes sense in each workflow or in each use case. 5G works great if you're in the automobile or if you're outside, but the minute you walk into a building, 5G just can't penetrate structures very easily. It's just that's its Achilles heel. But what will probably, I guess, live in harmony with maybe at some point, or assuming that they don't try to duke it out for domination, is that you can actually have 5G microcells within an organization. So you've got an office building, or maybe let's forget the office building. Let's say we've got a manufacturing floor. All right. So in that manufacturing floor, you have all these different machines that need to be automated. And of course, again, we don't want to get stuck on that whole having to run the cable to everything. And a lot of these machines need to get moved around. People reconfigure production floors all the time, right? I'm seeing something interesting in the comments. I want to come to that in just a minute. So people move things around the floor all the time. So Wi-Fi and 5G give you that flexibility, but 5G's got that extremely low latency. Now, I don't know. I haven't read enough to know whether 6, 6E, and 7 are addressing that, but I just feel like either they're going to learn to work together, or they'll borrow from each other to create one unified technology, or we'll have a combination of the two, the 5G and the Wi-Fi living together. But for now, assuming that most organizations don't have 5G microcells in their office space, it kind of means that to get the best of both worlds, you need your 5G when you're outside or when you're driving, and then you need your Wi-Fi, a good Wi-Fi, when you're inside. And we can come back and talk about Wi-Fi more, but I want to take a break here and go look at the comments over here. So let's see, we got going on here. Got a little discussion going on about what are you doing in IT, everything. IT contracts. Oh, that's interesting. I have to mess with contracts in my day job, and I'm not crazy about it. So let's see. Interesting. Talking about bandwidth. How does that name? What? Wizik? Is that how to say your name? Interesting to talk about the we just got the 3600 megahertz auction finished, but don't have the microwave frequencies. All right. All right. Yeah, I really think that this Wi-Fi and this 5G and basically the spectrum is going to be the hot item for the next yeah, no, good point. And sorry, in the comments, unless we're talking about 5G versus 5 gigahertz. 5G is a technology, so the G has nothing to do with frequency. 5 gigahertz is a frequency. All right, so for instance, Wi-Fi uses 2.4 and 5 and 6, or now more recently using 6 gigahertz frequency spectrum space. 5G is still operating on the cellular spaces, which I think is what help me out here. As it's what is it, 1900, 900, something like that. It's all less than 2000, I think. It's all sub 2000, I believe. Again, I'm not a 5G expert. I'm just kind of relaying what I hear in conversations all the time at work, or a little bit what I read. But yeah, the cellular is all still, I think, all still sub 2000. So okay, yeah, thank you for that. Hey, commenter, Wyziak? How do I say that? Help me out with the phonetics so I know how to say your name correctly. Anyway, so where was I going with the 5G? Kind of coming up on time. I feel bad if any of you were pulling your hair out trying to figure out how to get into the other live stream that I scheduled. I feel like that was going to be a black eye for me. I thought I did the right thing. I went on YouTube. I scheduled the live stream for today for 9 o'clock. And I thought, okay, great. When I start my Zoom, because you start the Zoom client, which is what I'm using, and it'll just automatically know to send that to that scheduled stream, but apparently not. So I guess I have to go back and figure out what I did wrong. Or I might just ditch the Zoom. I just thought the Zoom would be a good platform because I could have guests. I was thinking about bringing in, like, see if I could find a guest to bring in. So oh, okay. It's Wyziak. Yeah, tell you what, I'll go Google it. So next time I see you, I'll know how to say it right. But so I apologize if any of you were, over there waiting on that one and then finally figured out it was over here. So I'll see if I can get that fixed. What I did get to touch on, but maybe talk about next week, is two things. One is concerns on artificial intelligence, which is certainly a hot item, just like Wi-Fi is. And the other one is kind of a little bit about our economy and where it's going, and the fact that we have built an entire economy in the last, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, that is very subscription oriented, which has moved us away from the idea of owning and caring for assets. And this is true not only with the cloud, but I feel like it's kind of true like with automobiles and things that we buy that we know just kind of have a limited shelf life. Well, I could get going on that, but I want to wrap this up only just in fairness to my family because, I tell my family, like, hey, guys, Daddy has to go and do a live stream, and I'll be busy until about 9:30, and then of course once I get done, they're going to want to go do whatever it is they do. Before I leave, any last thoughts from the commenters, questions, maybe topics for next week or something like that? So I appreciate all the contributions in the comments. So, and I appreciate those of you who have stopped by. And then, of course, after this is over, I'll save it. Like I said earlier, any of you who were watching this after the live stream want to just tell me a little bit about who you are. Like, are you a gamer? Are you an IT person? Are you a beginner IT person? Seasoned IT pro? Are you, I don't know, a small office, maybe small business owner who just DIYs your IT stuff, and that's why you come to check out the Network Advisor? All right, so. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for listening. Please leave comments, give me feedback. That's the best way I know how to serve you guys. I'm happy to make whatever I can that will make your lives easier, but I need to know more. Otherwise, it's just coming from my own ideas of what I think it is that you guys want. All right. Well, have a good rest of your Saturday, and we'll see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.